Okay, so starting off then with, in terms of just a brief introduction of where you are at the moment. So what, if you were summarising your course and what stage of your course you're at in a few short words, mind just introducing yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Sigourney and I'm studying zoology with environmental management at Harper Adams, and I'm in my third year now, so I'm on placement, um, which is at Eurofins Agroscience Services, and yeah, it's really enjoyable.
Okay, so with that, Growth Agroscience, and you been on a placement year, for a lot of people, zoology would be quite far removed from an agroscience company. Could you just briefly explain why, first of all, the benefits of a placement year, and then why Eurofins in particular appeal to you?
Yeah, so I decided to go for a course which had a placement year because a lot of companies require you to have like experience before you go for a job, especially like zoos and stuff. They kind of want you to have like a year or so, like volunteering with them, so they get to know you before they hire you. So I chose Eurofins because I know that they did a graduate scheme as well. So if I did a year's placement, then there's the potential for them to hire me after university as well.
Okay, and you say about a placement year. What in particular with this placement year? Uh, so for those who are, I suppose, picking and choosing between a placement year and a non-placement year course, what would you say is the value in your view of doing a placement
Um, I'd
year?
say it's valuable because you're able to experience what life's going to be like, really, I guess, after you've completed your course, and you're able to apply some of the knowledge that you've been able to gain in the first 2 years of the course. And then you're also able to see if, like on the placement, I've been able to see if there's things that I do want to do after uni, and then things that I don't really want to do. Um, Before going straight into a job after uni and then realizing I don't really like this. But
So, I suppose like a trial and error, seeing what you like and what you don't like, and what
yeah,
fits.
yeah, it's a bit like a taster, really.
Okay. So with that being said, then obviously a lot of the students doing a similar course to yourself, they're on the work experience, and the work experience is generally a lot shorter, and a lot of learners may find their work experience valuable, and some will also find that their work experience is maybe a bit of a similarity to a placement year. Would would you say there was a major leap from a placement year, well, from a work experience to a placement year, or would you say it's pretty similar for them as a transition, in your view?
I'd say it's fairly similar compared to when I did my work experience at college. But I'd say the difference is that I'm able to do a lot more stuff independently. I feel like they're a lot more like employers are more confident, I guess, um, on it when you're on like a university placement. They're more confident with leaving you to do tasks alone. I've found, whereas when I was on my college course and I was doing tasks, I'd always have to be like supervised really. But then also you're able to do like a project um, in your placement as well, which is quite good because then you're still, I guess, doing uni work whilst you're on the placement, so you don't really forget stuff.
Okay. So, with you saying with a project, obviously your final year involves your dissertation. Would you say your placement has given you necessary research to take into your placement from your placement year into your dissertation, or did you already have an idea going in, or is the experience shaped what you want to research?
Um, I still haven't really. decided what I'm going to do for my dissertation yet, but the project that I'm doing at the moment is I'm looking at a trial, looking at the cabbage stem flea beetle and seed treatments for that in oilseed rape. But yeah, I'm not sure yet what I'm going to be doing really for my dissertation, if I'm going to be using something from my work placement or if I'm going to do something completely different. I don't know yet.
Fair enough. And in terms of, obviously your placement year has been quite different, different to what a lot of previous graduates who I've spoken to before would have said their placement year was like, purely based on the fact that you've come into your placement year during COVID. So I wondered if you could just give us a insight into what your peers found with looking for a placement in COVID, and how did the whole placement hunting go before you got to your actual placement?
So I think a few of my peers had secured quite a few placements after like long interview processes in like January, February, and I think some of them were for some consultancy kind of student roles, and they sadly all had to be like dropped off, and they're basically their opportunity was just cancelled, so they're having to look again for placements. But the university have actually said that because of the circumstances that we're all now in, we don't have to do the full term of 42 weeks. So they've said that you can do even like half a year really, because I think some of my friends, they're not going to be starting till November, December, and the university ideally wanted us to have started by like end of September, but some of them aren't going to be starting yet. But one of my peers had a placement with the Field Studies Council, and she was going to be at somewhere in like the southeast area, but she's now been told they're closing all of their bases, I think she said, so she has to go all the way to Scotland now, which isn't very convenient, but she's still going to do her placement, and that's what she's got to do.
That's fair enough. Yeah, like you say, not an ideal set of circumstances, but I suppose like in work, you go where the work is, and it's like you say, it's for up to a year, so sometimes it's a useful experience in itself. In terms of your working environment then, obviously Eurofins, I assume you're a mix of potentially office, lab and field-based work, potentially. How do you find the environment with COVID?
I'm at one of the regional bases, so it's a lot smaller. We've got a team of 3 of us, so we're coping quite well because we're just in the office and obviously like socially distancing and disinfecting all the work surfaces and stuff. But at the other bases, like there's a lot more staff, so they've got them working from home.
Sure.
So when they need their equipment, they'll go in. But when we'll work from the office, but when we go out to the field, we'll all travel in like separate vehicles, and we'll be, when we're socially distancing, we'll wear like masks and stuff. But when we're like spraying, we'll have like our respirators on and boiler suits for if we have to get close when like mixing up stuff.
Okay. In terms of, I suppose this is more of a question because as a lot of the students who listen to this chat, and myself included, and probably yourself included, the prospect of going into a second lockdown, you won't provide guidance from your workplace what that's going to look like, nor will I. So how do you predict that a second circuit break lockdown is going to affect your working pattern, or do you reckon it's not hugely going to affect it, and you and your team can possibly get on as normal? Just as a bit of a prediction.
Yeah, I feel that we'll just be getting on as normal, really, because we're only like either going to be in the office, and if we're in the office for like an extended period of time, then we'll just do the like office work like from home, really. But and then we'll be out in a field, like just marking stuff out or spraying. So I don't really feel that we will be severely affected. No.
Sure. So the other thing that obviously is a big part of your placement, or it certainly was with mine when I was at Casenda, was effectively your placement supervisor in terms of your university lecturer coming out to visit and meeting your supervisor, your actual placement supervisor, and then effectively finding out a bit about your placement project. Is that, I assume, been all done by Zoom, or have you actually had face-to-face?
Yeah, so we had it as an online meeting, which I think they may have planned to have done anyways, because I'm quite far from the campus, about like 3.5, 4 hours, so I don't think they would really come out anyway. But I think my placement tutor said she'd hope to possibly come out for my second visit later on next year, but I don't really know.
They're up in the air at the moment. So, on top of that, I suppose, with that being said, obviously your second year, your first year definitely won't have been touched by COVID at all, but your second year, I suppose, the tail end of it was just starting to. So, from an academic point of view, from your second year, how would you say studying under COVID? What was that like? I know it would have been the tail end of your academic year, but just
yeah. So it was about like just before the Easter break. So we only had about 1 or 2 lectures left, really, for the year, and then a few of them were just posted online. Anyways, like either as a pre-recorded meeting, or explanation of slides, or it would be like a class meeting on Teams. But I felt like it was I didn't really find a difference in my quality of learning, because I found that everything was still available online like it was before COVID, because I tend to prefer to go back and watch everything online anyways after the lectures.
Sure.
I find it a lot more easier to learn that way, but that's just me. But yeah, the assignments and exams, so our exams were changed and became open book assignments, where we were given about a month which was the time we would have really have used anyway to have revised. So just every day I'd spend a couple hours doing assignments. I only had 3, so I had a much better workload, I think, than some other students who would have had 8 exams. They were suddenly given like 8 assignments or something like that, which I guess would have been a lot more harder to cope with, I guess.
I suppose that comes on to then, obviously with your second year, as we've just said, it was the tail end, so realistically the university wouldn't have had much chance to put any, I suppose, precautions in place. I suppose with it being in your second year house with friends who you met, I assume you did the same thing I did, which we met friends in first year, and they were the people who you lived with in your second year. That was certainly what I did. In terms of what was your experience, I suppose, obviously the university would have to an extent shut down pretty much straight away, and like you say, open book assignments, but as we both know, that's only part of the university experience. In terms of how was Newport, how was the town, which Harper's adjacent to. How did you find that side of it, the support from the university and the actual experience of being a student living in a town miles away from your home?
Yeah, I found that Newport it's a pretty nice little town. Everyone is really friendly and quite supportive, especially during COVID. Like everyone was still trying to support all the local businesses, and I remember everyone was just like starting to queue up like outside shops and stuff. But a lot of people would then complain about that. But I feel like the support from the university was that's quite good. Like they in my first year I wasn't having like weekly tutoring sessions, but in my second year I thought, well, I want to kind of improve my grades, so I was having like support sessions every week, which greatly improved my grades really, and that's quite good. And the other support is like learner support for like if having dyslexia and stuff. I've been benefiting from that as well, because I did an assignment once, and a lecturer picked up on some of my language used, like in sentences. I don't think she really understood it, and she just suggested that I went to get a test for dyslexia and found out that I was dyslexic. So that helped me and able to get like extra time and extra support to help me in university, which was quite grateful for. But yeah.
No, that's good because I had the same experience. The only difference was I knew about having dyspraxia before I went into the university, which is, but yeah, I can definitely agree that Harper's academic support team was good, and it's good to see that they've got it set up for effectively people who are potentially struggling. Which would struggle more during a lockdown situation, so that's always good. In terms of just to let people know, disabled student allowance, which it's still a thing, although I believe it's certainly smaller, will I suppose help you out towards printing credits, technology support and reading material, but that's more of a footnote. From that, have you had any support or I suppose in touch from the university to give you a bit of an idea of what year 4 is going to look like? I know it's very a fluid environment at the moment, but just more, have they been in touch at all and given you an idea?
I don't know about my 4th year, but I do know that for students that started this September, or returning students, we were sent an email saying like most of the lectures were now going to be online, and some of them were going to be really small, like tutor sessions that would be like in person. I think I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure some would be like in really small groups in little classrooms. But that might be changing now. But I think they're still doing some exams in person, because I had some friends that had to go in to do some of their exams this September. But yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like in 4th year, but if everything's going to end up being online, I'm not too bothered about that myself. But I guess wanting to use like the library and go in and use like the group study rooms, then I hope that would still be available, but I don't know yet.
Yeah, sure. From that, with that being said, actually, obviously, one of the things it wouldn't have been something that you could have decided in year 2 and was irrelevant to the current year that you're in. But in terms of your final year, if you know in advance that the sessions are going to be online for the year, would you still go back to Newport, or are you have you already, for example, put a deposit down on a flat to rent, or are you decided to stay at home?
Yeah, so I think I definitely plan on returning to Newport. I put a deposit down for a house in, I think it was about January time. Did that. I'm still going to go ahead with it. just because I can then see all of my friends as well and still get involved like with stuff on campus, because all of my friends really live like absolutely nowhere near me at all. Like I've not really been able to catch up with them in person since March. So I do plan on returning and going back to Newport. I do enjoy it there. So yeah.
Good. I suppose from that then, rather than talking any more about COVID and because we've spoken quite a lot about that now and the different thoughts with that, I was just wondering if you could give us an overview of what I suppose the student experience is from your first year, and how I suppose the transition between your first year and your second year works, because obviously a lot of the learners, the year one is completely different socializing than your year two or second year socializing.
Yeah, so in my first year, I found the studying and like all the modules kind of followed on from my course that I did at Otley. It was very similar, like modules. So I went in with quite a good understanding of all the modules, which helped. And then, yeah, in second year, things started to step up a lot more. And I needed to do a lot more studying, a lot more background reading on stuff. And yeah, I definitely think the socializing, I went out far less so that I could ensure that I got like the good grades. But yeah, it was quite good, because I think in second year, although I didn't get to, but some courses you'd be able to like have optional modules, but because my course I already chose like at the beginning of the year that it was going to have a different pathway when I was in my first year, like in the second year I had some more like environmental kind of modules compared to the rest of the class, but yeah, it was still enjoyable. It wasn't too hard, but it was definitely a massive step up from the expectations in first year.
Sure. Okay. With that being said, if your first year modules, as you just said about the elective modules that you didn't have the option of, but I assume then, so were you on the general zoology course, which you then specialised in, or you already picked that before you started?
Yeah, so when I was enrolling for university, I chose the zoology course with environmental management. So all of the zoology pathways had all the same modules in our first year, and then in our second year we split off into 3 different groups. So you had the just applied zoology, and then you had zoology with environmental management, and then you had zoology with entomology. So we'd like have most of our lectures together. We have 8 modules in total, and I'd have about 6 of them with everybody in the class, and then the other 2 modules I'd have with other courses.
That's very similar to other course experiences, and I'm not sure about other universities, but certainly from my previous experience, we shared modules with ag students, with wildlife students, and so on. So yeah, it's a pretty similar practice as I've been informed across the board with sharing different elements. With that being said, then obviously for a lot of people, moving from Suffolk to Shropshire might be quite a daunting process. So, especially if what would your accommodation like in first year? Which accommodation did you go with in the end?
So I was in self-catered. I was in these fairly newish blocks, which I think we built in like 2016. So it was quite nice accommodation compared to some of the other accommodation that I'd seen on the campus. Like I wasn't really into the catered, although I think they got like a bit bigger rooms, but yeah, it was quite good, like in flats of 8, but there'd only be about 7 of us in there, and then I think a fourth year would join into each flat towards the end of the year.
Okay.
But yeah, first year was quite good, like living with all these other students, and if you didn't really get on with anyone in your flat, you'd be able to go and talk to other flats, or if your flatmates weren't doing anything one night, you can go talk to the people in the flat next door or downstairs, and you always had people to talk to no matter what. And many opportunities to make so many different friends from either from the same course or from different courses, because then in my second year I lived all with zoologists, and the one thing I found was that because we were all on like the zoology course, you'd kind of not be able to escape your assignments really, like, or your lectures, like what would happen at uni would then get brought back into the house, like, or when are you submitting this assignment, have you done this yet? Whereas sometimes it was quite nice, and I remember back in my first year it was quite nice to not have any other zoologists, because you'd just be able to get on with your work whenever you wanted and not have to be asked if you'd handed it in already or stuff like that, and compare your work. But
no, I get that because they have quite a good system, Harper, about mixing you up in your first year. Where I can remember being with vet nurses, vet physios, and an ag engineer as an example. So, and as you say, in my second year, I had the same thing, a similar thing. I picked. Actually, in fairness, we had still quite a diverse. We had a bio-vet, we had an actual engineer, and a wildlife conservation student. So there was a bit of diversity there. So, with that being said, are you with the same zoologists in your final year, or have you mixed it up slightly?
Yeah, so for fourth year, I've got one of my close friends who's also a zoologist in the house, and then someone who studies food, like one of the food courses, and then someone who I think studies one of the land management courses as well. So quite varied. And I decided to live with them because they were the people that I mainly would go like on nights out with. So I thought, may as well.
So rather than going for potentially people on your course, go for people who you actively socialise with, which, I can understand a lot of people doing that. So with that, the other thing that is probably daunting for a lot of people, obviously self-catered, generally speaking, is cheaper accommodation because you're not paying for your food. The main thing that might be daunting to a lot of people, could you actually cook when you started? Or did you have to teach yourself how to actually make things from scratch? Because a lot of people go into self-catered is terrifying if they can't actually make anything other than a jacket potato or beans on toast.
Yeah, I mean, like I could cook before I went into uni, but I know some people didn't really enjoy cooking, so they still go to like the canteen instead. But because we were in self-catered, they still had the option to like make themselves a snack or a cup of tea, like whenever they fancied really, or like bake. Like me and my flatmates were baking like every week, just making all sorts of stuff, like using up what was in the cupboards. But there was always still the option of going to the like canteen or something, but it was really easy because if you had a lunch hour you could just go back and make some pasta or anything really, but rather than having to spend like £4 or £5 like a sandwich or something.
No, I get that, and I certainly also remember a lot of people doing that, especially I'm assuming like there would have been students who were in the catered accommodation who probably drifted over to self-catered at the weekends. That used to be the thing that happened because of only having a microwave and a toaster was quite restricting after 3 months. So on top of that, so in terms of two parts to this, I suppose. One, why did you, I suppose, pick Harper, and then did it meet your expectations go above them or fall short of them?
So yeah, before going to Harper, I'd gone to a few open days. So I looked at Nottingham University and then the university centre at Harper, and I chose in the end to go to Harper because I quite liked the fact that it was a smaller campus and more rural. And although I then had the need of having to take my car because it being in quite a remote, more of a remote location compared to Nottingham, university, I don't really regret that choice of having to bring my car. But yeah, I chose it because I don't know, I quite liked the outside and the country. So that was quite a perk, being able to wake up, just opening your curtains and just looking at all these really nice fields and stuff. I found that quite nice. Yeah, I wouldn't regret my choice, especially because I'm my year is the first year of the zoology course, which, whereas if I'd have gone to Nottingham, I think they'd have the zoology course for several years. But I guess we're kind of like guinea pigs at the moment, but it's still going quite well. I wouldn't regret it.
So I suppose the only other thing that is an observation I've made from this conversation and my own previous experience. So although you're studying zoology, same as when I studied animal behaviour, you made a bit of a pivot in terms of your placement year into the agricultural sector. How have you found, I suppose, being in the agricultural sector and living around so many farmers at Harper Adams?
Yeah, I thought, well, when I was looking at placements, I thought I've had quite a bit of experience with the animals and stuff, and I thought, well, I'd like to try more stuff that I haven't had experience really with, which was crops and stuff. So I thought, well, I'll go into an agroscience kind of job role, but it's going well. And yeah, there's a lot of farmers, but it's I don't know, it's just quite normal, I guess, because going around at Otley, there was a few there, so it wasn't much of a massive difference, I guess. But for some people that had been at London for their colleges and living in London their whole lives, they found it quite a shocking difference for them. They were a bit oh, didn't quite realise it was going to be like this. But for me, I didn't really see a difference. Didn't really affect me, maybe.
Yeah, we did have some people at when I was at uni who had never seen a cow before. So there's one of them every year. But I suppose the other things from the point of view of a lot of, well, from your placement and from your experience at Harper does seem to bring out the agricultural side of everyone's course, from what I've experienced. And a lot of the modules, large animal management, I'm not sure if you did do that module on your course, but it leans more towards farming topics. I'm not sure if they do that with some of your zoology topics. Do you feel like they have an ag leaning, or?
Yeah. So we had a genetics and biotechnology module, and we had that with some of the agriculture students, and we found that most of the examples covered were it was looking at cattle and sheep, whereas a lot of the zoologists kind of wanted to look at maybe genetics of more exotic animals, but I guess there's more data maybe on the cattle and stuff, I guess, compared to other things. But I guess that's what the lecturers are more skilled in, more experienced in. So I still found it quite a good module, but I know a few people
would have preferred
Yeah.
So have you been, as you say, a guinea pig course or a baby course because of the whole only just effectively being on the brand new program? Have you found that there's much room for you to change the course curriculum? I know we did it with animal behaviour, so have you found that that was a pretty easy process?
Yeah, so we would feedback on some of the modules. If we said like that it didn't really felt like it could be related to other modules, we'd let like the course tutor know, and so therefore for the people in the year below, they would be put on slightly different modules, or they'd create a slightly different module for the year that followed after us.
Sure.
Which was quite good, but I guess we still had to go through that module. But
yeah, we had the same thing. I suppose we've talked about COVID, we've talked about the overview of your course as a whole, a bit of a touch onto the student life and student experience. I suppose the last little bit for a lot of people is in terms of looking to your next step after your final year. What is it looking like to yourself at the moment? Are you thinking, as you've hinted at earlier, about a graduate scheme? Are you thinking of further study, or are you potentially, is the goal to still potentially go back into working in zoos, which I know a lot of people doing your course, that's their ultimate goal. So
I am thinking of, at the moment, going straight into a job after completing my degree, but then I'm also becoming quite fond of the idea of possibly doing further study, but I'm not quite sure at the moment. I guess it depends on what I get
overall
at the end. Yeah, so I don't think I'll end up applying during my fourth year to do further study. I think I'll probably apply maybe like a year or so after, and possibly looking at further study, just to see what my options are, I guess. But
sure. Now, I think that, to my knowledge, will be vast majority of the questions that a lot of the students I assume will want to know. So what I'm going to do